Good morning, the ditch, the on the news. Welcome to the Irish NFL show in partnership with Pundit Arena. It's the morning after, I guess, the morning before. Welcoming everybody. I say half of the NFL fans in Ireland are still in bed, but it's all good. We're live, so it's good crack. Joined by Colin, Brian, and Mark. Lads, good morning. Welcome in.
Yeah, I suppose we'll discuss the games, but we were expecting offensive fireworks in that Bills-Ravens game. Didn't turn out that way. So, unless Michael, you're like yourself and supporting the Bills, it's difficult to get the adrenaline going on that side of things. Now, we'll talk about some of the goings on, but an interesting couple of games yesterday.
Definitely interesting, and a couple of interesting set of results. The Packers destroyed the Rams. I wouldn't go so far as saying destroyed, but they beat them very well. That was the first game last night, 32-18, and 17-3 in Buffalo. So obviously a very comprehensive performance there by Buffalo last night, lads. Look, I'm quick on the old Photoshop, as we can see, but I guess let's jump into that first game in Green Bay. Colin, I'll start with you, man. What was your thoughts on that performance? Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be Rodgers, Brady, or Breeze on that side of the Super Bowl. So it's not going to be a bad Super Bowl, I guess, for the neutral fan.
Look, the Packers were very impressive in what they did going up against that Rams defense, and they came at them from all angles. They were good through the air. They were really good on the ground. They made sure that they got everyone involved. So kudos to them for doing a very comprehensive job on offense. The big takeaway from me, though, was that Aaron Donald wasn't fit. And he shouldn't have been out there, I don't think. I get why they did, right? Because he's the most disruptive player in the entire league. But to me, it felt very like Beckham in 2002 when he rushed back for the World Cup, or Henry Shefflin. Henry Shefflin played in the All-Ireland in 2010, just weeks after what turned out to be a cruciate knee injury. The entire thing was dominated by the build-up to that, and would he play, wouldn't he play? To me, I get again why you do that, but the message that sends to all the other players is you're absolutely reliant on that guy. And if he's not there, then that means we can't function at the same level. And Shefflin hobbled off after, I think, about 13 minutes of that final. And Donald wasn't good to go last night. You could see that he wasn't explosive, and he couldn't take the number of snaps that he usually would. I think that impacted right across that Rams defense. I'm sure the lads will cover off on other points as well around some of the goings off, particularly on that first touchdown. But to me, that was a huge issue for the Rams that they never recovered on. But look, the Packers were really good in terms of everything that they did, that they needed to do, and they will be quite the force to be reckoned with in that championship game.
Yeah, and one of the other talking points leading up to the game was Ramsey on Adams and how he would potentially control Adams and take him away from the Packers offense. But in the previous show, we discussed it around the fact they had Tanyan, Skantnik, other player, Lazard, and they had 190 yards between the three of them. So we knew there was going to be other options for them. Jones was yet a quiet first half, came into it in the second half, literally the first play, second half, 60-yard run. So again, it was a comprehensive performance across the board. It wasn't solely reliant on Rodgers to Adams, which we've seen for large parts of the season. Yeah, the Donald thing was an issue, but realistically, do I think even if he was fit, would they have had enough? I don't believe so. I think as the game went on, and albeit he's playing with what we call a serious enough injury, Goff still went back to the traits that we're used to seeing in terms of not knowing when the right time is to get rid of the ball, taking sacks when he's had an opportunity to throw the ball away or take the incomplete pass, putting the Rams offense in very difficult situations. And whilst they rallied to a certain extent and got within a touchdown, I don't think anyone's ever felt the game was in jeopardy, and they just pulled away. They pulled away at the end, which is really much what we all expected. I mean, we expected a reasonably tight game, maybe not as high scoring as it was, but for the Packers to pull away. And they've done it. They're through, and whilst it's not a full stadium, 9,000 fans in there last night was still, you could see, you could sense the atmosphere and the anticipation of them potentially going back to a Super Bowl. So it's going to be going to Lambeau is going to be difficult next week for Saints or the Bucks, whoever wins tonight.
Yeah, I mean, very simply, guys, the Pack delivered the most comprehensive team performance of any of the 4 teams last night, even compared to the Ravens-Bills games. I mean, the Pack were, across the board impressive. We vaunted up the Rams defense. Well, it wasn't the Rams defense that got 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits. That Packers defense, which has been underrated all season, is a good complementary piece, is very solid. Yes, they don't appear to be like turnover kings, if you like, but they are a very nice complementary piece, and it's about an overall team game. And equally, as Aaron Rodgers said straight after the game, the real MVP of the game was probably actually the Packers' offensive line. They were bursting holes for their 3-headed monster at running back. They were keeping Aaron Rodgers nice and clean in that pocket all night. And of course, when Aaron Rodgers had to burst out of the pocket from time to time and make a throw on the run, of course he did. And it is a unit, of course, that's missing David Bakhtiari, their all-pro left tackle. So very impressive of them to put it all together. But, it's funny. We've talked all season about teams of destiny, and maybe this is Breeze's season, and we looked at the Bills and the Browns breaking these long streaks. It can sometimes be overlooked how much Packers fans have suffered over the last while. I mean, there's this whole talk now that this is going to be Rodgers' first NFC Championship game at home. And that's because when they've been in this position before, number 1, number 2 seed, they've actually blown their opportunities in the past. They are, as a franchise, only, of course, won 2 Super Bowls in the last 50 years. So it's equally the case that, they have had actually quite a period of sustained near misses and lacks of success. Obviously, they haven't been to the Super Bowl since 2010. So maybe, in fact, we've been missing the narrative all along. It isn't the Bills or the Browns to break their drought, but it's the Packers, actually, to ultimately break the drought. And super impressive performance last night. So well done.
I mean, you could actually just take what you said there. I agree with what you said, but you could take what you've said and turn it on the fact, how hasn't Aaron Rodgers won more than 1 ring? But then, if you look at guys like Peyton Manning only won 2, Drew Brees has only won 1. So it shows you, I guess, the competitiveness of the league. As well, and how you can't be dominant, like Dublin, for example, in the GAA in the All-Ireland. All right, Brian, come on. The Packers played really well last night. I think it was a combination of Rodgers made it look easy at some points, but that game for me was won in the second quarter when the Packers got 16 points in the game. That I know we were talking about last night, Brian. That Alan Lazard, that touchdown? I don't think he's getting as much credit as people are getting. They got that catch, as you said, was unbelievable. But more so, not just Lazard's touchdown, but the other one I think it was with Devontae Adams. The short throw. Rodgers found time and somehow found the movement as well. So he wants it. He was talking at the end to I think it was Pam Oliver, and he looked so confident that he was going to win that game. So God help anybody that wins tonight to go over there next week. But I think regardless, it's going to be a great matchup in this NFC Championship. And it's a win-win for an NFL fan because, as I said before, you got Brady, Breeze against Rodgers next week. So I think it'll be an awesome matchup. But again, very quickly, sorry, Jared Goff showed signs last night. Jared Goff, for a guy going into Green Bay with the weather, his fun, the team he had with no Cooper Kupp, didn't play awful, but there was definitely times he could have done a lot better than what he did last night. No harm to him, like that. Like you can't turn it on for a great touchdown and then a 2-point conversion and then hand it off. And Akers is only kept to 90 yards. So there's definitely ways to go back and revisit that Rams team. But with Sean McVay there, I'm sure they will. Does anybody want to add anything else before? Oh yeah, I was going to say, lads, we need to get a coffee sponsor.
All right, we definitely need coffee this morning, Michael. I'll tell you that. But the last thing I was going to say is just to show how complete the performance was by the Packers. For me, was actually that last touchdown, because they hadn't done anything off hard play action or very much off hard play action, and because the Rams had to respect their run game. That moment where Rodgers drops back. They all bid up on it. You knew it was coming. You knew he wasn't going to miss that long throw. He'd obviously missed one earlier in the game. And that dagger, I think, was a good epitome of how they'd set it all up so well as a team through that whole game. And what a finish for them.
Michael, you touched on the Adams touchdown, but, the play that was drawn up, to get Adams off Ramsey was very good. He didn't go wide out. He came across the line. Ramsey, linebacker got in his way in terms of him trying to get back over, but he was looking for him to be handed off to the next cornerback on the other side who just didn't pick up on the play. It was well designed, so they're obviously working on that all week to get Ramsey off track.
I think the other thing that stood out in terms of Rodgers. It's all he can make the throws and all that, but it's the decision making. And Brian, you touched on it in terms of Goff and taking the sack when he really couldn't afford to, and obviously the Rodgers and the pump fake and all. He made all the right decisions last night. And that is what takes the QBs to that elite level. Is they know when to go for the big pass, when to dump it off, and he has been masterful at that. And he caught the Rams quite a few times with personnel changes last night. There were all sorts going on. So even with as good as the Rams defense has been, Rodgers was there counting the numbers again and catching them out.
Yeah, and it wasn't a bad game for the news. Just want to say as well, folks, we've got quite a large crowd on Twitter. Welcome in, folks. Leave some comments in as well. If you want, we can talk about the games and talk about the big shock that's going to happen in the NFL tonight. But I guess for now, while we move on, there's a little nugget in the chat. Yeah, great. As we move on, obviously Packers move on to the NFC Championship game. That game is the early game next Sunday. Yay! It's not going to matter for us, is it? We're going to watch it anyway. That's like the worst Sunday of the year for me, boys. But then we're in lockdown, so it doesn't really matter. Just jumping on again what I said at the start of the show. Obviously, the Packers winning 32-18. And I actually have to be, I didn't agree with this last night, but I agree with it now. Rodgers is right. It could have been a lot more than that, let's be honest. But the Buffalo Bills, boys, marching on to their first AFC championship since 1993. I think, obviously, a huge moment for the franchise. We had Jim Kelly on. It didn't show him on TV last night, as far as I know. Full disclosure, Colin, I fell asleep just before Lamar Jackson went off with a concussion and woke up when it was 17-3. So I'm looking forward to talking about this game. But I'm thinking now, and I guess I'll talk a bit more when it's my turn, but obviously a huge result for this team, regardless of how they got the victory.
Look, yeah, I mean, I gave you a bit of the stick at the start, but in fairness, you have been a big believer in this Bills team, and they keep performing. They did what they needed to do. And I think what stood out to me really around this game is the fact that the Ravens gave so much respect to Josh Allen, right? They changed their game plan, their defensive game plan completely. They didn't blitz in the same way. And that is testament to how good Allen has been against the blitz, which is really tough to do. When you got guys coming at you and headhunting you, and you're still able to get it off. And so the Ravens, who are so good at that, say, yeah, if we do that, he's going to pick us apart. That's a testament to just how well he has been playing. The fans in Buffalo last night, I mean, that's one of the sad parts, obviously, of this season, because the noise coming off of that stadium when it's not even close to half full. It was just brilliant. And obviously, look, Jackson threw his first interception in the red zone that goes back for 101 yards. But it really was the kind of chess match overall. And it was one of those that I suppose there'll still be things that the Bills, I'm sure, will look at and say, but they schemed as well. They changed a lot of what they did, but they are in the championship game. I can imagine there will be even more videos this week of bits and pieces going on. And look, the Ravens, there's the run back there. When you hear him talking about it and how he slowed up because he wanted White to come in to make the block. But I thought what was interesting, I suppose, was the number of kind of mistakes on the snap last night. There were a number of them. It wasn't just one. And look, that was what took Jackson out of the game ultimately. But delighted for the Bills and for their fans, and whoever comes through tonight, and we'll discuss this in a while, they're going to be a difficult unit because they have a QB playing at elite level. They have Stephon Diggs, who is just brilliant, and they have the ability to scheme on defense. So kudos to the Bills. It was great to see them get the win.
You can come off mute when you.
Well, look, the fact that we're here, coffee, and the stream's on is a miracle. So, Brian, I was going to ask you, man, I just going on what Colin said there. It's very easy for quarterbacks, Brian. All of our teams do it, just to hand the ball off and let the running backs take time off the clock. The Bills enjoyed a good few passes last night, and it looks like Josh Allen isn't afraid of passing the ball. Do you think, regardless of who he comes up against next week, it's going to be a hell of a game offensively, or are you just like, meh, they won a game? I mean, the game wasn't great last night for the first half anyway.
No, it wasn't. No, but there's two drives in particular. We'll come to the Allen piece in a minute, but there's two drives I really want to discuss. We discussed how average, shall we say, the Rams' defense has been in terms of stopping the run game. And the first drive of the game, perfect drive for the Ravens. In a sense, 8 minutes off the clock, they were running the ball efficiently. They were using Edwards, Dobbins. Jackson had a couple of goals at it. Didn't get too many yards, but they were tipping away to 4th and 1, silly flag, and obviously then the field goals. Well, there was 4 out of 6 field goal attempts missed last night, so I'm not putting it down to Tucker because obviously he's a great kicker. But that drive, in a sense, was such a perfect drive to start the game. They needed to get points early, and then the other drive, which is again probably the best drive they had in the game after that particular drive, was the one after they went down 10-3, where they drove straight off the kickoff. Again, used a couple of minutes off the clock, coming towards the back end of the third quarter, potentially going in to tie the game. You showed it there, interception, return for a pick six. That was the game in a sense, because there wasn't even any more points after that. But it was such a tight game for large parts that it was going to take a play outside of the norm, whether it was an Allen long throw, breaking away, Diggs breaking away. And obviously he had that touchdown, but it was going to take something outside the ordinary to kind of break the teams up, because I thought they were so well balanced between the both of them. They played to halftime 3-3. At that stage, you didn't know what way the game was going to go. And just on the Buffalo fans, if Dr. Tony Houlihan is an NFL fan, he would have had a lot of sense of nervousness watching that game last night. Not because of how tight the game was, more so because of the amount of hand holding and hugging in the crowds. And I doubt 9,000 Buffalo fans have had a vaccine in the last few weeks, so I think he would have been cringing at those scenes at the end.
I'm going to put my Northern hat on as well here, Mark, and say Michael McBride, Chief something officer up here, who's in charge of everyone up here. Sorry.
Well, I mean, if we want to put the US hat on, I actually think Dr. Antonio Fauci is a Bills fan, I believe. So, maybe he gave them special permission to have.
They were exonerated, really.
You never know. But yeah, it's funny, that first drive, I'm with Brian on this. That first drive, I said on Saturday's show, I think the fear for the Bills is that the Ravens run game will dominate them, that they'll be dominated up front. And then that first drive, they had them at will. Like the first two runs, I think, ripped off 12 yards and 11 yards. And you suddenly wondered what they were doing. But Leslie Frazier has that unit coached pretty well. They haven't been as impressive overall this year as they were last year, but they held an NFL offense to 3 points. I don't care who you are or what weather it is, and whether you're even playing the Bengals or the Jets, Holding an NFL offense to 3 points is an exceptional performance and deserves all the credit. The pick is going to be talked about for years to come. Second longest play the equal longest play in NFL playoff history. And it's just a great defensive design. Jackson, I don't think makes a wrong read or a bad play necessarily. He just doesn't realize the underneath man is lurking there. Jumps the route. Could have taken the kneel down, but obviously the touchback, but obviously ran it out and made the right decision to do that. I do actually think Jackson gives up on that play, though, which really frustrates me. Every time I see that replay, it's kind of like there were about 40 to go, and he goes, I'm just going to run into the offensive lineman to make it seem like I made an effort, but I can't be bothered running anymore. Maybe I'm casting too many aspersions on his character, but it seemed a bit Cam Newton-esque to me, thinking back to that infamous play in the Super Bowl.
And he gave up?
Yeah, I think he did.
He gave up.
Honestly, it looked like to me on the replay he did. But they didn't lose it just because of that. Obviously, that was a turning point. The drive I want to talk about is actually the one just after the half. We've had a 3-3 ding-dong. And actually, like the Packers and Rams game, the Packers came out after halftime, 75 yards all on the ground, blew the game open from 19-10 to 25-10. In our game, we're talking about now, the Bills and the Ravens, the Bills going 3-0. And Brian DeBole, who's likely going to be a head coach somewhere, maybe the Chargers, it's being rumored in very short course, kind of mixed up the offensive game plan a little bit more, just built in a bit more time, a bit more flexibility for Allen. He only ran the ball twice in the entirety of that first half. And they got one drive going. And it was always that type of game. It felt like just get one good drive, and who knows? They get the drive, they go up 10-3. And to be honest, watching it live, I kind of felt like that might be enough unless Lamar pulled out a moment of magic. And unfortunately, he didn't pull out a moment of magic. He pulled out a moment of mayhem on that particular game. But yeah, fair play to the Bills, but they'll need more. They'll need more next week, whoever they play.
Let's just, let's worry about next week, and we've got a whole week to talk about that. The Bills have beat the Colts and the Bills have beat the Ravens. Doesn't matter by how much. The Bills have beat the Colts. Obviously Rodrigo Blankenship, and the Bills have beaten the Ravens, boys. Doesn't really matter who they're going to play next week. I think they've proven that they can give whoever they play next week a game, whether that's in Arrowhead or in Buffalo. This has got their year written all over this, boys. Whether anybody wants to talk about it or not, doesn't matter who they're playing next week. That's the way I see it at the minute. I'd be amazed if they're not very close to the team they're playing next week. For me, that game could have started very differently. The Ravens came out, got a couple of good plays. I think it was Dobbins running two or three times, getting good yardage down the field, and that game could have started very differently if they had got a touchdown. It didn't, and then Allen, albeit in the first half, like me and Brian could have suited up a quarterback and gave it a go. Like let's be honest, there wasn't much going on. But obviously in the second quarter, the Bills start to pull away, and with 14 points. With the pick six and with Stephon Diggs, I don't want to start talking this, but if it is the Chiefs next week, if you're Andy Reid, you can sit here and you can talk about Stephon Diggs and covering Stephon Diggs and trying to make it hard for Josh Allen. He could do something that people haven't seen a lot this year. He could hand it off. He could give it to Cole Beasley. He could give it to John Brown. Gabriel Davis as well. Dawson Knox as well. So he's got the facility there, the same way that Aaron Rodgers has got a lot of different wide receivers there as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next week. Have we any final points on this game? Because I really want to talk about it tomorrow night live. But Brian, have you any points maybe on Josh Allen or how?
No, I just wanted to make the point that Mark said about Jackson giving up on the play. Literally, as that play happened, a Ravens fan who was texting me on and off during the game, text me saying he just gave up on the play. It was like put the effort in here, but to be seen to be running back, but he had no interest in making any tackle. He was protecting himself. And just to the point, next week, the Bills, look, they're either playing the Browns at home or the Chiefs away. The magnitude of those two games, and in terms of the conversation next week, will be very different, depending on whether they're going on the road or whether they're playing at home in front of their fans. So,
I would say if the Browns beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead, the magnitude is going to be equally as crazy.
There's that point as well.
Has anybody any final points before we look ahead to today's game? Any final points? Colin, Mark? No? He's all happy enough?
But yeah, I think we'll probably discuss it more tomorrow night as well. But I just think Josh Allen has everything he faced over the first 2 seasons of his NFL career, and like what he is doing is just brilliant. He has shown just such incredible resilience and self-belief. He's a really, really impressive kid.
Yeah, and Michael, I just say, the Bills' defense, just to put into context the stats in relation to it, they ultimately held the Ravens to 150 yards on the ground on 32 carries. And that sounds like a lot, but considering the production that's been out of that Ravens offense, again, kind of historical performances, almost going back to the 40s and 50s, you'll settle for that, because Lamar still, as he proved last night, can't beat you with his arm consistently. And for the Ravens to take that next step, he has to develop that capability. There was one other final point just on fumbles, just really quickly, because actually in the Packers-Rams game, there was a great fumble by the running back that went straight to Aaron Rodgers, and there was no turnovers. It was the closest we came to a turnover, and the Rams knew how lucky or close they were. Literally a couple of plays later, they hit the ceiling touchdown effectively. But actually in the Bills game, I had Ravens fans going on about the opportunity when Allen fumbled and they were lucky to recover it with Deion Dawkins. The Ravens fumbled 5 times in the game. They were lucky to recover all of them. So it's kind of one of those, it coulda, woulda, shouldas. I mean, just you got to make the opportunities and you got to take them when they come. But, that fumble and not recovering it didn't change. Wasn't the only deciding factor. The Bills and Packers both deserving winners.
Yes, sir. And we'll talk about this more tomorrow night. Very interesting points there in the Ravens. Another year, I thought Lamar Jackson was in the front of Madden. So it'll be interesting. Look, it'll be interesting to see how we all get on. Let's look ahead. Look, there's 2 of these games tonight are really good. So which one, will we go in order of time, or will we finish with Mahomes?
No, we'll go with time.
All right, okay. Well, I was looking forward to that. Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes for a place in the AFC Championship. Apparently, the Chiefs are the greatest team of all time, the greatest quarterback of all time. 8:05 tonight. Nice start for the old European audience, gentlemen. Colin, I'm going to start with you. Who wins this game and why?
Can we first put something out there? There is no negativity on this show around the Browns, right? If you go back and you watch it last week, we say that the Browns, I just thought they were too beat up because of COVID. I said if they hadn't been, I thought they'd beat the Steelers. Thought they were too beat up. They showed me, kudos to the Browns. They're a serious football team to overcome the resilience, and show the resilience that they did. Really, really good. Their running game is outstanding. And can the Browns win this game? They can. They can just put the ball into the hands of Chubb and Hunt, and they can run, and they can have what happened last week happen again. But Mahomes isn't Roethlisberger. That's their issue. And I think Mahomes can throw multiple interceptions and win games. We have seen him do that. And while, he hasn't come back from 28 points down, he gave the Texans a 24-point start last season. And just to make it interesting, I think, because he was probably bored, and decided, we'll give him 24-point start now. Let's actually do it. So the Browns can absolutely win, and the Browns are they're a good football team. They're really well coached. They're incredibly resilient to have done what they have done over the past few weeks, because they were really beaten up with COVID, and to lose their head coach. He was in the basement, and apparently his kids' stream was ahead of his. I think, Mark, you highlighted that to us. So I expect the Browns to hang around with the Chiefs. I think that they will make it interesting, and I think they will game plan to run the ball. We're Broncos fans. We know that Broncos didn't have a good season, and yet the Broncos had success. Melvin Gordon had success running the ball against the Chiefs. So if you're the Browns, you you should be able to run the ball. Now, thing is, the Chiefs often come up with these games. Last year, they shut Derrick Henry down. So it's going to be very difficult. I really think that just because Mahomes is a special QB, no, he still has plenty that he has to prove. But Mahomes and Kelsey is ridiculous. Kelsey is built like a tight end, but plays like a wide receiver. I mean, to look at his stats this season, and that's the issue. You take Kelsey away, they still have Hill. You take those two away, they still have options in terms of you never know who the third guy is going to be. Will it be Watkins? Will it be Harmon? They've so many different options. So I do think it will be really difficult for the Browns to do it again. I think they will be there or thereabouts. I think they will absolutely look to create the upset. I think in this game, you have to be on. You have to show up. If the Chiefs think that they're in the championship game, they will lose. I just don't think they will do that. I think Andy Reid is around long enough. He's seen enough heartbreak to know that he needs to get his team right. I think they will. I think the Chiefs will do enough. But I don't expect them to. This Browns team is not the Browns team of old. They will put up a performance, and they will make it difficult for the Chiefs. But I don't see anything. I don't see it enough ways that the Browns, given their pass defense around, over the course. And remember, they gave up 500 yards to Penn last week, and you're going against a QB who is vastly superior to Ben Roethlisberger. That's the reality. I think the Chiefs will have enough and will win this game.
I also think the Chiefs defense, and in particular Steve Spagnuolo, who's done 2 fantastic schemes over the years in terms of being a defensive coordinator. When the Giants won the Super Bowl, and obviously last year the Chiefs' defense was quite poor throughout the season, but then they seem to turn it around coming in later in the season, obviously into the playoffs. And this season, Mahomes is 14-1, and we've joked about the fact that he hasn't really played well, or the offense has been sporadic at times and has been held in check, but yet they've won the games. In those games, their defense has played well enough to make sure Mahomes was still in a position to win the game. Don't get the kudos they deserve. But yes, Colin has touched on it, the options. I mean, last year, Sammy Watkins did very little during the regular season. Came to the playoffs, big time plays against the Titans, that big time play in the Super Bowl. I'd imagine some player will come out tonight who hasn't really been too heavy during the season in terms of his stats and will make plays. Hardman in particular, I think, could be the guy, because I think Kelsey and Hill, whilst they're the guys everybody talks about, there will be another player within that offense because they're so stacked to produce plays. Teams have nearly beaten the Chiefs this year when they put up a lot of points. Week 5, the Raiders beat them, put up 40 points. The Chiefs still scored 32. Week 9 and 10, the Raiders put up another 31. They nearly beat them. Chiefs drove down and won the game. And then the following week, the Panthers, 33-31. They put up 31 points in our head, and they nearly won on a field goal. Ultimately, that's what the Browns are going to have to do, because you're not going to be able to keep that Chiefs offense to a low-scoring game, in my opinion. They're going to have to be putting up at least 20, 25 points to win the game. And that's where I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. I think, yes, they'll play really well offensively. They will put up points. I don't see them hitting the 30s. And that's where I think ultimately the game will be won, because Mahomes will be fresh. The offense will be fresh. I expect they'll come out ready to go, and I think they'll put up 35 points, and I think they'll win by 2 touchdowns.
I always love pairs of teammates when they kind of get associated together, because actually when you say their names together, you kind of try and figure out, like, what do they sound like together? Does it sound like a firm of accountants or a firm of solicitors or something? And every time somebody says Chubb and Hunt, and they always go together, I don't know, to me it sounds like gravediggers or something, Chubb and Hunt gravediggers. I can see the sign now. They are certainly going to hope to bury Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And objectively speaking, there is a lot of things that the Browns have that should be the formula to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. As Brian said, you got to put up points. They've proved they can. Whereas the Ravens game, whether it was last week, obviously they can put up points in bunches. You've got to keep the ball away from Patrick Mahomes as much as possible and hopefully control it on the ground with sustaining long drives. Ergo, Chubb and Hunt. Ergo, Jarvis Landry on third down on drag routes. They have the capability. And indeed, they also need a strong defense that's capable of generating a turnover too. And with Myles Garrett causing havoc, they're great cornerbacks. The Browns do have all of those aspects. But there are a lot of buts against it. So while I can objectively see that those things exist, unfortunately for me, there's far too many things in the other side of the column when it favors the Chiefs. I mean, if we're doing our P&L account, unfortunately, the Chiefs just have too many debits and not enough credits for me to try and balance the books. So the Browns, unfortunately, when you look at their record this season against teams that were 500 or above, they're only 2-4. It felt like until that Steelers game, every time they had a big game to step up to, they would be found wanting. They got handled very handily by the Steelers and the Ravens earlier in the season. You could say, well, look at the last 2 weeks of the season. They beat the Steelers, obviously, when they needed to in Week 17. And by God, they beat them last week. So momentum can be a beautiful thing. But I am actually comparing them a little bit in my head now to not the last time. The Steelers don't lose in the wild card very often. They did in 2011, though. I know Colin and Michael are going to remember this. This is when the Denver Broncos, at the height of Tebow mania, knocked them out in the last in overtime with that Tebow to Demaryius Thomas touchdown. Everyone ramped up Tebow for a week. What happened? They went into Gillette and they got absolutely trounced. And the reason that to me is relevant is I feel that there's almost this hype, this cathartic release, of course, for Browns fans. But can they maintain that for a second game in a row? I'm not sure. I don't think they can get to that same height. The Chiefs, just to say something on them, the last 7 games they've won, they've only won by 1 score or less. Like 3 points here, 2 points here. It's been tight. And people have said, well, maybe that means that they're not as dominant as everyone considers. I actually look at it a slightly different way. I actually say that it proves that when the fire is in the iron, when the heel of the hunt is underway, they have the cool heads necessary to prevail. So I think they can do it. But, I'm going to go for the Chiefs. The Browns could do it 100%. We're not writing them off necessarily, but the Chiefs just have too much for me, and the Bills will go into Arrowhead.
Brian, have you another comment? I seen you said no. You happy enough?
Sorry, no, it was actually just on the Browns. I'm similar to Colin. I had a few people contact me during the week saying, why all the negativity on the Browns? I'm not being negative on the Browns. We're asked to preview a game and make a prediction. And unfortunately, the last 2 weeks, the prediction has gone against the Browns. They were right last week. We'll see if they get the result tonight.
Well, look, this is going to be a really interesting game. And it's great this game's first, so I don't fall asleep like last night. But I think the team who gets out to a fast start here is going to be the team that wins this game. The Browns last week, you seen what they done against the Steelers, albeit that was a freak situation where they scored 28 points against a team that was, well, look, there's a lot of, it's like peeling off an orange here. That Steelers team were unbeaten at one point and everybody was talking about them as if they were the next Dolphins in the 70s. Before I move any closer to my next statement, Mark's comparison of a accounting set of accounts or set of financial statements as a graduate accountant is hilarious. So I look forward to maybe calculating a few ratios, Mark, later on. See Neil's comment there, Neil. I didn't want to take it off the screen, Neil, in regards to what you're saying about points, but I'll talk about it in a second, and I agree with what you're saying. Look at Tyreek Hill today going up against Denzel Ward. I think Ward has got the advantage over Tyreek Hill. The Browns are 11-0 when they're leading at the half, and they're also 11-0 when they're leading the turnover battle. Mahomes has been, he's got his contract. I'm sure he'll play lights out today. Dominating the time of possession is going to be key in this game. If the Browns can hold the Chiefs offense to maybe like 25, 26, 27 minutes or less, they've got a hell of a chance in this game. But it's going to really come down to Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. It's a monster day for these two lads. At the end of the day, I think those two lads, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, are the fourth in NFL history to have produced. I've done my notes in this, boys, before I get to slagging, to have produced 1,200 plus yards, 12 plus touchdowns in the same season. So they're all right. They're all right. And it's not just like that. It goes down to the fact that the Browns put up 41 against the Titans in Tennessee. They put up 42 against the Ravens, albeit they lost the game. They put up 48 against the Steelers last week. They know how to score points. That's not even a discussion point. They will score points today because, again, it's like when you're playing against Kansas City, you can't cover all the players like Kelsey, Tyreek Hill. You can't cover everybody. It's going to be the same situation for this Browns team, who are getting the respect they deserve going into this game. But again, it will come down to these big plays. You always see Patrick Mahomes has these big plays, and I'm talking about plays of over 10 or 20 yards. The Browns are 9-0 this season when they produce more big plays than their opponents. They need another huge offensive performance, but this one for me will come down to whether the Browns can control the time of possession battle and keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' $500 million hands. The Browns are built to do this. I think they will do this. And I think the Cleveland Browns shock the world and go to Buffalo next week in what promises to be a hell of an AFC championship. Because why the hell can't they? The Chiefs have had their 2 weeks off, or how long have they been off for? Let's see what they can do. Because they're the ones with the pressure. They're the ones with something to lose tonight, boys. And what Colin said here was very interesting. Do they think they have this wrapped up? Because we always seen the team that thinks they have it wrapped up or the team that go one and done. Brian, one and done over there.
I mean, Michael, I'll just say, like, if they do shock the world and it's the Bills-Browns AFC Championship game, I mean, you might as well call it the Redemption Bowl before the Super Bowl, because one of those teams, after so much pain and hurt, will be going back to the Super Bowl. That will be amazing in itself.
It'd be unbelievable. I genuinely think it could happen, and just need this comment there because I didn't want to talk about it until I said it. But yeah, Browns put up over 30 points throughout the season against the Cowboys before Dak got injured. Ravens, Steelers, Titans, Indy, all teams at the top on given times, all teams with winning records. They have nothing to fear. They have nothing to lose, boys. And they have a chance tonight, 100%. And Brian, are you going to round us off on this lovely game at Arrowhead?
I was just going to say, if it is the Browns next week against the Bills, then and it's the same situation that we had last night. 2 quarterbacks from the 2008 rookie draft going against each other for an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl, and one of them will be going to the Super Bowl within 3 to 4 years of their career starting. The 4th pick against the 7th pick in that draft, so it makes for a great game if it does happen. I don't think we're going to be anyway worried about the level of games next week. You've touched on it. If it's Breeze, if it's Brady against Rodgers, and it's the same scenario in the AFC. No matter what happens tonight, we're going to have 2 fantastic games next weekend. And
I'll say one thing, Colin. Not that I want to talk about betting or the odds or the underdog situation. That Browns team are at the same price as the Broncos were against the Panthers. What happened then?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're saying can they? Why can't they? Absolutely, they can. I think if they're to do it, to me, what they're probably looking to do, though, is more like the Rams-Chiefs game from 2018, that absolute shootout that took place. Because one of the things you said, they're built to do it. They're only built to do it if they can score points. They're not built to do it defensively. And that's where they have to stop, they have to stop the Chiefs, but I don't think they can. So I think the only thing they can do is to outscore the Chiefs if they're to do that. Now, can they? They can. I don't think they will, but I think that's how they have to do it. When Big Ben throws for 500 yards on you, you're not, you can't say you're set up defensively. They didn't sack Big Ben either last week. That's going to be the issue for them is so to me, it's about them scoring more. It's about, I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of getting off to a fast start. They have to do that. They have to do what they did to the Titans and to the Steelers and absolutely bamboozle them early if they're to get the win. I would love to see the Browns Bills talk about like a throwback. Everyone get out that those old starter jackets from the 90s. It'd be fantastic. Let's see. It's going to be a really interesting game. I really think that, and we still have another game to talk about.
Well, look, I mean, just on Colin's point there, the Browns have already been involved in probably two of the greatest games this season, both the Steelers playoff game and the regular season game they had on Monday night against the Ravens. If we have another game like that, or the Rams Chiefs, like he's describing, or maybe Baker and Patrick would like to take us back to college days and that famous Texas Tech Oklahoma shootout they engaged in, as a neutral, I'll love every single second of it.
So you three are picking the Browns before I put on Jeff Reinbold's opinion. You three are picking the Chiefs. Sorry, I'm picking the Browns.
Yeah.
So we'll just say that publicly again for Twitter, because we've got a lot more Browns fans on Twitter than Chiefs fans. You three are picking the Chiefs, and I'm picking the Browns. Yeah. Okay, great. Jeff Reinbold from Sky Sports, our friend over at Sky Sports. God help him last night, because I fell asleep during that game. I don't know how those boys are sitting there. Like, fair play to them. Like, I know they're getting paid and all, but it must be tough sitting there, boys, at 3 a.m. Fair play to him. Here's what Jeff thinks of this game tonight, and you can see Jeff being on a little tour of Ireland.
Cleveland Browns against Kansas City is a game that nobody is giving Cleveland a chance, and I'm going to tell you, I would not rule them out. Cleveland is a team right now that's on a great hot streak. They're starting to believe in themselves. I think they believe they're a little bit of a team of destiny. They're incredibly good on the offensive line. They should get Joe Bitonio back, their all-pro left guard. They're particularly good inside. Kansas City, on the other hand, their defensive front has given up rushing yards. You've got two great running backs in Cleveland with the ability to alternate those guys through. Each brings his own set of skills to the game. But to me, Chubb is the key, because I think he's a guy that can bleed those tough yards inside and allow Cleveland to control the ball, get Baker Mayfield on the perimeter on the nakeds and the bootlegs, use play action to get the ball to Jarvis Landry, who we saw last week against Pittsburgh is one of the top inside receivers, one of the top slots in football. Austin Hooper, the tight ends, is an outstanding target in the intermediate range, and that's where I think Baker's going to have to work. Cleveland has to stay close with Kansas City, and Kansas, that's tough to do because Kansas City has a track team at wide receiver. Travis Kelce, the best tight end in football. And think about this, Andy Reid is outstanding. He's one of the best coaches in the National Football League history after a bye. He will come at Cleveland, I'm sure, with a wrinkle or two that they have not seen. And again, I think Patrick Mahomes, his mobility, his arm talent, and his competitive toughness give Kansas City the edge. I like Kansas City in this one, but again, I would not be shocked if Cleveland was able to pull an upset, because again, Cleveland is playing extremely well right now. I just don't know whether they've got the skill in the defensive secondary to hold up against Kansas City's offense.
Thanks very much, Jeff, for your opinion. Obviously, Jeff Reinbold joining us hopefully each week until the playoffs and the Super Bowl is over. Let's see if we can get him on, boys, next Sunday morning live before the championship game for a bit of crack. But no, yeah, obviously great to hear from Jeff. Interesting to hear his opinion. I think after 50 minutes, I'm just realizing how long we've been going for. I think it's time to move on to the final game. It's like something from Revelations in the Bible. Usually we have this big setup here, but for this game, I've just nicked Tom Brady's picture from Twitter. And I put this up. It's the battle of the old men, 40-something against 40-something. Could be Drew Brees final game. I mean, there's not really much else you can really say there. But Colin, who is going to win this game? Obviously, in the Superdome, not too bad in terms of timing. 20-12 is not too bad. Who's going to win? Why?
It's an interesting one. I mean, obviously, look, there are so many storylines around this. The build up to it this week has been interesting in that the Saints seem to be copping a lot more flack for their win over the Bears and the struggles that they had than the Bucs are copping for their win over Washington, because the Bucs had their struggles against that Washington team. And so to me, the talk certainly on social media seems to be that this is the Bucs game, and they're going to revenge those two losses from earlier in the season. But if you look at, and everyone says it's tough to beat a team 3 times in a year. It is, but if you look at since 1970, where teams have beaten another team twice in the regular season and then met in the playoffs, the team that won twice is 14-7. Now you want to go back, further. It's happened 32 times in total, and the team that won twice has won 20 of those. So if you win twice, it's not like you're suddenly cursed and you can't win. I think this will be an interesting game, just in terms of how the teams match up. Because the Saints are really good defensively. They're outstanding against the run. They're very good against the pass. They're, I think, one of maybe 2 teams to hold opposing QBs to under 60% completion. And they're top 10 in sacks and QB hits. And about the only way you can disrupt Tom Brady is to get in Tom Brady's face. We had Wade on during the week, and he kindly reminded Mark that his Broncos defense had hit Brady 24 times in that 2015 AFC Championship game, and that was what the Broncos had to do, because that was a seriously talented Patriots offense. So you've got to make life difficult for Brady. If you give Brady time, if Brady has time, he's just he'll make the passes happen. And every time he's been kind of doubted this season, we heard the arm strength is gone, he couldn't throw long. Brady, a bit like Patrick Mahomes giving the Texans 24 points, decided, right, well, I'll show you all. I'll just throw long for the next few weeks. The Bucks were really impressive to end the season, but if you look at the opponents that they played, you can only beat what's in front of you, but it does make a difference as Broncos fans. We know you can finish strong at the end of a season, but depending on who you might meet next, it's not necessarily going to turn out the same way. I think I expect it to be a lot closer than the regular season games, but I think that the Saints in the Superdome, in Breeze's last rodeo with Sean Payton there, I think they will do enough to win a really close game and to head to Lambeau to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Packers next week.
Colin, you touched on the fact that they played certain teams, and it's always relevant to who they play next. And obviously, playing the Saints for the Bucks hasn't been a good thing over the years, even before Brady came in. The Saints are going for 7 in a row against the Bucks. They've had their number. Breeze is 5-2 in his career against Brady. Okay, these type of stats don't really matter in these games, but certainly things in the background do. And last November, when the Saints won 33, I think everyone remembers that video that went out from the Saints dressing room of them all dancing. And at the time, I said sometimes those teams tend to come back and bite you, and I see them potentially meeting again in the playoffs, and it's come to pass that they are playing each other. However, that defense for the Saints has been really good all year, and to be honest, it's bailed them out of so many games, because we discussed for so long, even when we started doing this in October, when the main talking points we had was how poor Breeze had looked, for the start of the season. He had the injury. To be honest, I don't think he's come back and played any better, to be honest. I think he's, it's not a case of the Breeze that we saw in the past where the long balls, we're used to watching them in the dome, and it's 30, 40-yard passes, and it's really aggressive style offense. It's very sporadic at the moment. He relies so much on Kamara, which is good. The fact that he's come into his own over the past few weeks with the 6 touchdowns, played reasonably well last week coming off the COVID. So they're stacked. But I don't trust the Bucks defense. And while Devin White has had a great season, and he's a huge plus in terms of coming back, there's games this year where bigger games, even against the Rams, for example, where the Rams went in and beat them in Tampa, they came to give up high points. So for me, I do think the Saints will win. I think they'll win by a touchdown to 10 points. 2 players in particular that I actually think will have very good games that have been floating under the radar. Antonio Brown, it's hard to say he's floating under the radar, the type of character he is, but he's been really good over the past few weeks. And Deontay Harris for the Saints, the wide receiver. Everybody talks about Thomas. He's a secret weapon. He's good on special teams. He's been very good for Breeze in terms of taking short passes and turning into 20 to 25-yard pickups. He's a real star in the making. For me, the Saints will win and go to Lambeau as well. That's my pick. Yeah.
In week one, it was a big game, and Breeze outlasted Brady and the Bucks. I mean, it was a bit probably wasn't as close actually as it seemed. They were kind of quite handily handled them. And in week 9, the big build up was, oh, Brady's going to get his revenge, and this is going to be leveling up, and this division stood up for grabs. And by the end of that 38-3, you went, no, the division isn't up for grabs. The Saints have now got the tiebreaker, and the Saints will continue to dominate that division, which they did in winning their division. So you actually start finding narratives, and like Colin said, well, for game 3, what's going to be different? I alluded to, I've been, as a fan, on the wrong side of this, Patriots beating Jets twice in a year, 45-3, and then losing to them in the wild card. So I've seen it happen and felt it happen myself. But it's funny, you try and find, if you like, the storylines away from the obvious. Devin White and Levante David trying to keep in Alvin Kamara is going to be a big part of this game. Alvin Kamara has been on some great tears in the rushing game lately. He's only had 3 rushing games over 100 yards, but he had one, obviously, in his famous 6-touchdown performance against the Vikings, and he had 99 yards last week. So he's coming right at the right time. They've obviously got the Swiss Army knife Taysom Hill, who had an awful game last week, really, but has performed when they've needed to in a variety of different roles, and they expect no different. CJ Gardner-Johnson needs to have his suit pockets checked, because last time I checked, they found Mike Evans in there, because he has certainly had him in his pocket all season long when they've matched up against each other. But I'm less against the Bucs. They have stepped up on defense at times. The Packers game springs to mind when they got pressure. They got pressure on Aaron Rodgers and forced him into an unusual game with a couple of picks. They can perform, and certainly on offense, take Evans away, take Goodwin away. They've still then got Antonio Brown, who was only with them for a couple of practices by week 9. They've still got Gronk. They've still got Cameron Brate. They still, even if Ronald Jones is a game-time decision, have Leonard Fournette, so they can make some hard yards in the rushing game as well. The narrative, and look, of course, it's Breeze and Brady. I mean, that's the big thing. It's the only the first time since Elway and Marino, the 2 biggest record holders for first and second in passing yards, have matched up against each other. It's the first time the 2 leaders in passing touchdowns have matched up each other. They're 85 years of age combined, for Christ's sake. Of course, they're the major storyline. But one will play next season, and one I don't think will. I think this season will be Breeze's last. So every game is potentially his last ever game. And whilst we always talk about Elway and we talk about Manning going off into the sunset, winning the Super Bowl in their final game, most of the time, it doesn't end that well for legends. It didn't for Favre. Montana was whiling his times away in Kansas City before Kansas City became good again, if you like. It certainly didn't for Marino. 62-7 shellacking by the Jaguars back in 99. So it isn't always fairy tales, marshmallows, and little daisy cups and dancing. Sometimes it's the horror of reality. And whilst my head, this is going to sound weird, but my head says the Saints, because all the reasons outlined, because they've got Thomas back, because they've got Harris back, because they've got those additional weapons. But guys, I've supported Tom Brady for 20 years all the way through, and you never, ever count him out. You never, ever rule him out. So the heart says Saints. Sorry, the head says Saints, but my heart says the Bucs. And I'm going for the Bucs and Brady and Rodgers to be a game, an NFC Championship game that'll be amazing in itself.
Michael, can I just make one more point? Sorry. The Bucs were one of the few teams to have their bye so late in the season. They had it in week 13, which was quite unusual. And leading up to that bye week, there was a lot of pressure on Brady. There was a lot of discussions around, Bruce Arians was coming out with statements because he's a bit rash in terms of what he says, and people were questioning whether Brady fits into his offense in terms of going long force instead of going short. When they came back in the bye, something clicked. They just seemed completely re-energized. It was like they went away for 2 weeks and completely just sat down and looked at the situation. Brady's deep throws have improved dramatically. The stats are off the charts in comparison to those first 12 weeks. And maybe that's consistent with Antonio Brown coming into the offense, but they are much more dynamic offense, and they will give that defense a huge amount of problems. But Mark's gone with the Bucks. I still think that Saints defense will hold them in check.
Just before I give my pick, before I forget, Jeff Reinbold, here's Coach's Corner for the Bucks against the Saints.
The last game of the weekend is one that I think a lot of people are really looking forward to. It's the first time we've ever seen two over 40 quarterbacks starting this deep into the playoffs. Drew Brees and Tom Brady. First time they've ever, in their illustrious careers, have ever faced off in the playoffs. Now, New Orleans has won the two previous meetings this season. They bounced the Bucs both times and really have really dominated the Bucs. I think it's really hard. You got to understand it's very difficult to win 3 times in pro football against the same opponent. The Saints are coming in as healthy as they've been all year long. They have Michael Thomas back, which is a huge one for them. And the emergence of Deontay Harris, number 11, he's the X factor in this one. I think he gives them juice not only in the return game, but he's an incredibly good guy at catching a short pass and taking it the distance if they try and double up on Michael Thomas and double up on Emmanuel Sanders. The offensive line in New Orleans is outstanding. Defensively, nobody talks about New Orleans, but they have an outstanding defense. David Onyemata, Cameron Jordan, Trey Hendrickson, all really, really good inside players. Demario Davis, a sideline-to-sideline linebacker, and again, a very, very good secondary that's led by Marshawn Lattimore. So I think just the overall edge has to go to the Saints. They have belief, they're playing at home, and they have an outstanding kicking game led by punter Tom Morstead. So I give them a slight advantage in the game. However, on the other side of the ball, we're seeing a Tom Brady that we haven't seen in a long time. The ball is going vertically now. He's really adapted into Bruce Arians' vertical first passing game. You see last week, Antonio Brown over the top for a big one against Washington. Godwin for a big one on a post route against Washington. Evans has been vertical. You even go back 2 weeks to Detroit, and Gronkowski hit the Lions for a 40-yard touchdown pass in that game. Tom is much more comfortable pushing the ball down the field. He's getting great protection from his offensive line. They lost their right guard to a broken ankle. So it's going to be interesting to see how that affects their protection. But again, Fournette is a outstanding running back. Jones, I think, will be healthy this week. That gives them 2 outstanding running backs. And again, it's a tremendous matchup. You've got great skill and great quarterbacking on both sides. Defensively, you got 2 really aggressive defenses. Todd Bowles loves to blitz. They will get after the quarterback. I think this game's going to come down to turnovers. Who plays the cleanest game and who wins the kicking game will determine the winner in this one.
Thanks very much, Jeff, for your input there. I don't think he picked a team, but sure, it's all good. I'm sort of on the fence as well. I'm not on the fence, to be honest. The Saints have done the business twice this season, boys, and it's Drew Brees' final ride. As a Broncos fan, watching Peyton Manning, albeit Drew Brees is playing a little bit better than Peyton Manning did in this last year, we just know where this is going. I think the Saints have the all-around best team in this matchup, but the X factor for me is Alvin Kamara. We've seen multiple times this season how good he is, multiple touchdown games, and I think he will be the main difference in this game today. We talked about the Browns and the Chiefs about having to get a good start early. I think the Saints get a good start here, and I know they've got Brady sitting there. I know they've got Mike Evans, Antonio Brown. I mean, I don't even think we've mentioned Rob Gronkowski, to be honest. But it doesn't matter. The Saints will score more points. They will score more points. The Saints defense will hold the Bucs to about 25 to 30 points. The Saints will score, 36 to 44 points and win this game comfortably for me. And go into Lambeau next week, and that will be a hell of a game because Alvin Kamara and that Saints offense. We'll talk about that next week. But for me, I'm gonna pick the Saints. Have we all picked the Saints? Yeah.
Nope.
I'm on the Bucs.
Mark doesn't count because he's a Brady fanboy, but I mean,
Yeah, I know. Like, did you expect anything else?
I'm only joking. Obviously, the Battle of Mordor here, almost as bad as this, but sure, we'll not talk about that. We're
That's
back
for tomorrow again, isn't it?
Yeah, a couple of points before we go. Check out our podcast. Search Irish NFL Show on all good podcast platforms. We're back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. We decide it's live again. 9 p.m. Meh? Do you care? We're back tomorrow night live though, yeah, at some point.
Yes, definitely.
Sometime.
And we've also just joined Instagram.
We'll go in the middle, Michael, half night.
Half night, right? Well, we'll confirm that as soon as possible. We're also on Instagram now, Irish NFL Show. You see him at us Twitter, IRE NFL Show. I think Brian is going to buy a jersey for everybody to give away. I'm joking, but we'll do a giveaway on Instagram very quickly as well. Thanks to everybody that came on last week.
We can start giving away those starter jackets that Colin wants us to put out of wardrobe. So.
And there's a UK Bucks enjoying it. Go Bucks! I feel horrible now for picking the Saints, but they're a great group, and I obviously, I mean, look, there's a group that have waited a long time for a day like this, so I hope you enjoy it, boys. And who knows what's going to happen there. Big week ahead of us. We're on obviously tomorrow night live, and we've got shows Wednesday all the way through the Championship Sunday. I can't talk about the guests yet, but it should be good. Until then, boys, have a good Sunday. And for everybody watching, have a good Sunday. Get some sleep before these games. And yeah, let's go Browns,
Enjoy the games.
See you guys.
See y'all.
Here we go,
Bye-bye.
Brownies. Here we go.